So are you preoccupied with food 24/7? Do you feel cold, weak, and hangry? And does it feel like eating or not eating has become your whole personality? Realize that you're not alone. Undereating is likely affecting you much, much more than you realized. I'm Harriet Frew, and this is the Eating Disorder Therapist podcast. And in this episode, I'm going to explore the 8 effects of undereating on the body, mind, and soul. And this will give you a realistic insight into the impact of restriction on your well-being and give you a motivational boost to shift towards healthier and self-caring eating habits. If you want more support with your relationship with food, you might be interested in my Food Freedom app. Do go and check it out, but let's dive into the episode. So restrictive eating is normalized as we live in a society that continues to validate thinness on the pedestal of achievement, everywhere you look. But the impact of undereating on the body is really, really profound. And it's not something that just skinny people do. If you're a serial dieter, if you struggle with eating disorders or disordered eating, then you probably relate to hunger and food preoccupation as a predictable part of the fabric of daily life. And you might just think that this is your personality, whereas in fact, it's much more about restriction and the impact. And we know that from the Minnesota starvation study. It's pure evidence. You can go and check out another YouTube episode I have on that. And remember, 85% of people with eating disorders are not underweight. You can still be hungry and depriving yourself whilst looking healthy. Restrictive eating is not healthy for body, mind, or soul for the following reasons. Let's dive into the 8 reasons. Number 1, the emotional roller coaster. Your mood rises and falls erratically, like an unpredictable roller coaster. Maybe 1 minute you're high, euphoric from that control of eating. You feel energetic, you can take on the world, it feels amazing. But later, your mood dips severely and you're pretty much counting down the hours till bedtime or your next meal. Now, irritability and low mood run close to the surface of all your interactions as nutrient deficiency can affect the emotional center of the brain. So you might even just be so sensitive to any sort of tension in your life. If someone's breathing too loudly or the rain is blowing against the window, when you're undereating, minor things feel like major roadblocks and rage can bubble up, at any point. Fundamentally though, you're hangry. Number 2, you're all in your head. Anxiety and fear tend to run rampant in your mind as restrictive eating amplifies the fight-flight response. Now, lack of food means that you often feel spaced out, disconnected from the world, and you're not really in touch with your feelings. You're all in your head, really overthinking. So the focus is all about maintaining step counts, maybe your calorie limits, or you have very little genuine connection to your wants and needs and really what's going on because your day is punctuated with rules, timings for everything. You're in a cage prison of over control. Not great. Number 3, rituals and food ceremony. So you may become extremely ritualistic with food, creating ceremony and order with your eating. So you might eat with child-sized cutlery or eat foods in a particular order whilst taking a specific number of bites. And you may feel compelled to watch a food program or film again and again whilst eating. Perhaps you eat a lot of what I eat in a day content. Now, eating in this way often provides safety and control with all the rituals, and it also maximizes the joy of the limited food that you're actually allowing yourself. And you might also hoard quantities of food in your cupboards whilst rarely allowing yourself to eat it. Or outside restrictive eating, you may binge eat and wildly lose control, only to begin the deprivation afresh the following day. Number 4, loss of your life force. So you become withdrawn and isolated and disconnected from the people you love and the hobbies that you used to enjoy when you're under eating because your mind is obsessed with food. So you're living in your imagination much more than your reality. Dreaming, thinking, calculating, planning and fantasizing about food, and you don't have the energy or enthusiasm to get excited about other things. You probably lose your libido and sexual feelings, and food feels far more interesting, and sex doesn't seem necessary or relevant. Number 5, body dissatisfaction. So we know from the Minnesota starvation study that starved men became preoccupied with their body image. Now this was the 1950s and well before any social media influence. Now, the men compared themselves to others and felt fat in their bodies after starvation. So, research indicates that body image perception is absolutely impacted by restrictive eating, and feelings of fatness are often like projections of other feelings that are buried, like sadness, anger, anxiety, all these things. And it feels as though it's all about the body, when in fact it has little to do with physical size. So as well, consider your own feelings of fatness over a week, and imagine plotting a graph indicating the intensity of the feeling. Now also consider plotting a graph of your genuine body weight alongside. Now it's likely that the body weight graph would be pretty stable with only minor fluctuations, whereas feelings of fatness would fluctuate wildly over the day. So this gives an insight into understanding this phenomenon. Number 6, I can't stop thinking about food. So undereating can make you feel superior and right, but this is often fleeting and unsustainable because your ability to think clearly is affected by consistently not eating enough, as the brain requires a constant and consistent supply of glucose to function well. So restriction renders thinking inflexible and rigid. And although some people will claim that undereating can bring increased focus and concentration, it tends to be short-lived and is not sustained with consistent cumulative restriction. So thoughts often become extremely distracted towards food, and in fact the preoccupation can become intense with fantasies of meals out and preparing elaborate feasts. You get so focused on food, so it interferes with the ability to attend to normal life activities. In the Minnesota starvation experiment, the starved men became fascinated and obsessed with food. Some of them wanted to train as chefs at the end of the experiment. Now, if you're restricting, you might want to be around food all the time. Perhaps you're always baking, or perhaps you want to work around food so you can feel close to food constantly, even if you're not eating it. You might cook lavish meals for friends and family without eating a morsel. And you may become really fixated on what I eat in a day content, online stuff, recipe books, all the things, kind of the food porn. And you might spend hours wandering around the supermarket aisles, scrutinizing foods and labels. Focus on food to become your personality and focus, and you might engage in chewing gum or drinking copious volumes of Pepsi Max or something else to try and distract from the internal, gnawing, relentless desire to eat. And this means that you lose touch with the deeper meaning of life and what really matters to you. Relationships become superficial, and your investment in your work or job is diluted, and you miss out on spontaneous joy and living in the moment. Now, in some ways, this could be protective if your current circumstances are adverse or stressful, but ultimately restriction puts you in a survival rather than thriving mode. Okay, number 7, the inner critic. The greater the intensity of your restriction, and the greater your critical and punishing inner voice will be. Now, some people experience this as the eating disorder voice, almost as a separate entity from themselves. Others experience it as their own voice, which becomes increasingly punitive and punishing. So restrictive eating renders you more irrational and anxious. Your body is on high alert for danger, as starvation is immensely stressful, and you begin to interpret everyday life events through the lens of fear, and you might restrict even more to manage these anxious feelings. And number 8, thinner does not always mean healthier. Now, society, of course, equates thinness with health when the truth is far more complex. Undereating can have a pronounced impact on physical health. Skin dries out, hair thins, and immunity plummets. In extreme cases, the heart muscle is impacted and becomes weaker. Blood pressure falls and your pulse slows. Poor circulation can lead to feelings of extreme cold and leg ulcers, and your heart may beat irregularly. Sex hormones and fertility are impacted, libido decreases, and menstruation can be lost in females. And bone health can be disrupted due to hormonal and nutritional changes. Now, particularly up to the age of 30 years old, this is when bone density is laid down. So restrictive eating during this time can create osteoporosis later in life, increased risk of fractures, etc. Not good. Digestion slows with undereating, and there is a heightened sensitivity to feelings of fullness and bloating. And many people experience IBS, irritable bowel syndrome, as a symptom of restriction. You might find it harder to sleep, will often wake early. And when you undereat, your human survival instinct is to increase physical activity to seek out food, as was needed back in hunter-gatherer days. And this can mean that you have a strong desire to exercise and you experience intense restlessness. So what to take away? Well, I guess the impact of undereating on the body can be profound. If you've been restricting your eating for a while, these effects may have become normalized. They are not normal. And you might even be using GLP-1 meds and experiencing some of these impacts even if the food noise is absent. Now, many of these effects can be reversed through nourishing your body and with self-care and regular eating. So you might want to listen to or watch one of my other bits of content which explores exactly how to do this. So, did you relate to things in this podcast about undereating? How is your undereating impacting you? Do let me know in the comments. Thank you so much for listening and watching the Eating Disorder Therapist podcast. And if you want more support with your relationship with food, you might be interested in my Food Freedom app. Do go and check that out. And if you're on YouTube, please subscribe. And if you're listening on audio, please follow, rate and review, and also subscribe. Thank you so much. I look forward to sharing another episode with you very soon. Thanks for listening and watching. Bye.